In Psalm 22, King David gives us a very good practical what to do next if it seems like God isn't coming through for you. David, at the beginning of Psalm 22, it's the, why my God, why have you forsaken me? And then he goes on to say, God, I cry out to you by day, I cry out to you by night, I don't stop, I don't give up. But it seems like you've given up on me. And so if you've been there, you know that that's a very discouraging place to be. But then he shifts gears and he says, wait a second. He doesn't say that exactly in the psalm, but I think in his mind he said something like that. He said, wait a second, I'm going to remember the times in the past that you helped your people who cried out to you, and I'm going to find encouragement from that. And he does. He says in verse 4, he says, in you our fathers put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried out to you and they were saved. And you they trusted and they were not disappointed. And I thought to myself as I was reading that, I wonder who David is thinking of. Like people in biblical history who would have lived before him, would have cried out to God and God came through for them. I wonder if he was thinking of like Abraham, who had to wait 100 years for the child that he prayed for. Or Noah, who had to wait 120 years for the flood God said was coming. And during those 120 years, he had to build a big boat. That's how long it took to build the ark, 120 years. I wonder if he was thinking of the Israelites, who had to wait 430 years for God to send the deliverer to them while they were slaves in Egypt. And then after Moses finally came, and God used Moses to set them free, then they had to wait another 40 years while wandering in the desert before they could get to their promised land. God came through for them, but God made them wait. And sometimes God does that. Interestingly, the people who had to wait the least amount of time of all the people in the Bible who lived before David for God to come through for them were some individuals who didn't even cry out to God for help. They actually tried to hide for him. The very first people, Adam and Eve, after God placed them in the creation that God had made just for them and provided them with more than they would ever need, they sinned, they crossed the line. And they knew they shouldn't have. They felt guilty, they felt awful, they felt regret, they felt so completely different than they had up until then. And they didn't cry out to God, they tried to hide from God, but God did not wait very long to come to them so that he could tell them that he still loved them. That he was going to provide a way by which they could be forgiven. He was going to send a Savior, born of a woman, who was going to crush the serpent's head, who led them into that temptation. God didn't want them to wait at all to know what kind of God that they have, a God who's gracious and kind and compassionate and forgiving. But then they had to wait again. Adam had to wait 900 some years before he died, and in those 900 years, he never saw the Savior with his own eyes. He was still waiting for him on the day that he died. And then fast forward to the life of that Savior, and think about his mom waiting for 6 hours while she watched her son hang on a cross and die. And then waiting another 36 to 40 hours before hearing the news that he had risen from the dead, and everyone knew not only that we have a God who does love and forgive, but we have a God who's more powerful than anything. And that's the second thing that David remembers in Psalm 22. The very first thing he says, actually, after he says, God, I cry out to you by day, but you don't answer. By night, I'm not silent. He says, but wait, you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are over everything. You are more powerful than anything. Everything is subject to you, everything. And if the God to whom everything is subject, like the God who can do whatever he wants, who can overcome any enemy, who can get through any challenge, if that's the God who does not want to wait even one little moment to tell you that he loves you and to assure you of his love for you, well, I think you're in a pretty good place then today. And so remember that the next time it seems like God is far away. Remember what he did on the cross. Remember the emptiness of Jesus' grave. Remember how quick he was to come and assure Adam and Eve that they were recipients of his grace, just as we are. Rest well tonight, my friends.